It's always an interpretation, but of course that is also interesting because it's your own interpretation. Right? But more you know, more you can express, I think. First of all, I want to thank you, and this is amazing to see so many students interested in knowing more about myself as architect and as professor. TTT was born because, as you know, I was educated also in Japan, and I have been working as a professor in Japan. And during my studies, I worked also with Tokyo University and Kengokuma. And so at that time, we thought that because I was a professor in Torino, we could join Torino-Tokyo. And also one researcher from Tokyo University came to work in Foncia. So we said, okay, let's do TTT, Torino, Taichung, and Tokyo. To have every summer one workshop in a different city with the aim to build something. So the first workshop was in Foncia, and it was 2015, and we built in bamboo. So there was an artisan from Taiwan that came and was teaching how to use bamboo, because bamboo is very hard and also very hard to cut. And the experience was great because there were Italian students, Japanese students, and Taiwanese students. And they were all very excited to be together, and it was a great experience. And the workshop ended with the construction of one pavilion in scale 1:1. That was where all people now are smoking, the smoking area at the entrance of Foncia. Stayed there for 3 months. And then we did the same in Torino, and we built a pavilion using the CNC machine and the digital grasshopper tools. So students had to learn grasshopper and then to apply it into detail, into the design of the pavilion. And in Japan, because we had a shorter time, we worked on the small old areas in Tokyo to think how to improve the small alleys to make them to be more vivid again. So it was not building, but more was about urban studies.
So there was 3 different countries of students joining together to work in the workshop.
Yes, this was the aim, and it was very successful. So actually what happened in Torino, Politecnico, is that TTT workshop became very famous. So everybody wanted to apply. So I had a very rigorous and very severe application. So the best students could come. Or during TTT, I was invited to be a professor here, but in that time I could not join. I could not stay long time in Taiwan. So last year there was the opportunity again, and so I thought if I don't do it now, then it will be so hard to do it again. So I thought that it will be so good for me to have this experience in Taiwan, and also I think it's an opportunity to join a Western and Eastern culture. In reality, when I was younger, was my dream. It was my dream to travel, even before deciding to study architecture. I was dreaming to travel, especially to go to Asia. So then when I started to study architecture, I realized that I could also learn a lot about architecture. So I joined the dream of traveling and studying together. Life is a process of stratification. So it's very hard to think what is the most important one. But when I was studying in Torino, because my first studies was in Torino for 5 years, in Torino Politecnico. At that time, we didn't use models to work. And so when I went to United States, everybody was doing models. And so I was very shocked, and they was not able at all. So that experience for me was important because I realized how much it's nice to work with models and study the space. When I went to Japan, the approach is very different, but I was in PhD, so I was less in doing design studio, but more studying about research and theory. If you look only to the American approach, sometimes it's very competitive and very aggressive, and this I don't like very much. I like much more the tendency to try to work together, be competitive but not too much, more cooperative and trying to solve problems and make a beautiful design in case of the architectural design. We do a lot of projects in cooperation. I still think it's very important, as we do here in Foncia, that the students do their project in order to explore their way to process architectural design. But also it will be important in 4th and 5th year to work with different consultants as is in real life. So maybe one designer or two designers, and then more people specialize in different fields like sustainability, energy efficiency, and so on.
Do you think our future in this school maybe not only to care about the form, but also about the environment and some sustainability issues?
Yes, actually I'm organizing, as you know, last year and you both were there, we organized a tour to Italy. And after the tour to Italy, because I think was quite successful, so I started to create a cooperation with Italian universities. So the next opportunity will be to go, for instance, to University of Camerino and to do architectural design studio that is also with consultants, so with professors that are specialized in other fields. So in the architectural design studio, there will be also the opportunity to focus also on energy efficiency, sustainability, which nowadays are very important issues.
As well as architect, we need to solve problems always. Yes.
Yes, this is the nice part of our work. Yeah, actually, it's for a friend of mine that is a priest, Don Claudio, that he has a foundation that he called Salus Hominis, that in Latin means for the health of people. The retreat of silence is not for religious purposes. It's for everybody that wants to have a time for themselves, for himself or herself. So it's a place where to just go and stay alone. If you want, you pray, but you can also meditate, or if you want, you just stay in silence and think. So it's more than religious symbolism. It's more for having a place where to find himself. The shape, it looks like a church, reminds a church, because Don Claudio wanted at the beginning to have this first retreat of silence in the countryside of Asti. Asti is an area in Piedmont that historically has in the countryside very small Romanesque churches. And they are very small and they are in the countryside. So he said, why don't we think something that looks like that? So in reality, the design is recalling the shapes, but also is very asymmetrical, while the churches are very symmetrical. But it is very asymmetrical because it answers to the needs of being a very small place to live.
So it's like the shape is like the church, but it's not really for the religious.
They had orientation issues also. And so I oriented the place exactly as it was for the churches, because you can see the sunrise, you can see the sunset, and you can meditate in different moments of the day.
Also, the openings you designed is Is there any proportion from
Yes,
the church?
yes. The proportions are connected to the architectural tradition, because traditionally 3 windows were present and they had different sizes, and so that is also following that idea. But for instance, if you notice, the south opening is big but is protected because it can be very strong the sun. It's very difficult, but these days we are designing the pavilion, right?
Yeah,
the Taiwan book fair pavilion, and every time we are changing even small little things. So every time is like almost fighting with the project a little bit. So every time there is a story behind. But there was a project I really liked that I didn't realize at the end, but it was for during the COVID, a company from Morocco that produces paint asked me to do the design for their offices, waste storage, and showroom. And I really liked the project I did because I made a big research on Morocco, and it's a hot country and a country with a lot of tradition. And because the company was producing paints, they asked me to have a colorful facade. And I managed to have the facade and as a filter of light and sun. And I really like to think that architecture creates different kinds of spaces, from outside to inside. And I think in that project I did something I really liked. Unfortunately, we didn't build it because it was too expensive.
But you really like to use the light. You like to create the light how to come into spaces.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's very important. And also I think it's important that when you enter a space, you feel like in a story. So it's like to see a movie, one frame after another one, to have different feelings.
Layers.
Yes.
And scenarios.
Yeah, it would
space.
be so nice. Yes.
How do you choose the color in your design?
So for the work in Morocco, it was in Fez. Fez is a very historical city, and actually, traditionally, they were coloring the fabrics. So they have a very strong tradition in colors, and the colors traditionally comes from different kind of or plants or herbs. So they are all natural colors. And generally natural colors are very beautiful. So I did a research on the colors they had. And then they also have very colorful housing. So I pick up all these colors, and then some colors from the desert, because there are very beautiful landscape of the desert. And then I mix them in a way that I liked. I don't know how to express, but...
So there was a combination of culture.
Yeah, it's a combination of culture of Morocco in landscape and history. And also the fact that I created layers. If you look at the Arabic culture, because Morocco is a hot country except on the mountain, there are steel frames used to protect from the sun, but still see outside. So they have traditionally the concept of layers. And also privacy. More you go inside, the more is private. But still you can see maybe outside. So I use the same concepts into the contemporary architecture. So I think it's important try to make an interpretation of the culture where you are working. It's always an interpretation, but of course that is also interesting because it's your own interpretation, right? But more you know, more you can express, I think. Because when I was younger, if I think my first project at the first year of architecture was very terrible. But I didn't know what was terrible. But I think I learned a lot going to see very beautiful spaces. I was selected in this Italian office in Torino that was applying to the competition of what today is called the City Life. And it was a very big urban redevelopment in the center of Milano. And the architect in Torino is called Pierpaolo Maggiora, and he organized a group with Arate Sozaki, Daniel Libeskind, and Zaha Hadid. And when they selected me to work in their office, they asked me to coordinate the group. We were 2 people coordinating all the competition phase. So in our office in Torino, we had to do a part of the architectural work that was doing Pierpaolo Maggiora, and then doing all the coordination and the master planning that was coming from different parts of the world, because Zaha Hadid was located in London, Daniel Libeskind was located in New York, and Sozaki, of course, in Tokyo, but he already had an office in Torino because he won for the Winter Olympics in Torino a design with Pierpaolo Maggiora. So my work was quite incredible because the meetings I had with these architects, and only me and the project architects thinking about the architectural design. And so I had the chance to see the characters of these architects and the approach they have to architecture. And I learned a lot. I can say that Zaha Hadid really made research in architecture. So she was really proposing researches, even during the work of architecture, in the meetings. Then we won the competition. So this is I worked still on this project for 1 year, and then I decided to work more as architect by myself. So I left this work, but it was a great experience.
It seems like it's really difficult to combine different styles.
Yeah, that was a big challenge. Yes. So what happened is that in order to make it easy, we because there was like a place like this, so we say to each architect, okay, you make a proposal of a master planning, and then we will decide one of them, or we mix them. And so then we did like this. We decided one of them, and we mixed a little bit the other ideas. So the master plan was one master plan, but then we divide it in 4 parts. And we say, okay, Zaha Hadid does one tower, Libeskind another one, and Sozaki another one. And in fact, if you go to Milano nowadays, you see completely different styles of towers. I don't know if it's good or bad, but that was the way, because we cannot think that Zaha Hadid becomes Libeskind. But in that moment, Milano was looking for internationalization and globalization. So they really wanted some projects that was out of what was traditional. So this the way to bring architects that are stars was a way to promote also Milano, which many cities are doing this nowadays, right? I don't know if it's good or bad, but this is what is happening. But the experience was for me was incredible, because I work with these architects, but also because I had to coordinate, I worked with all the consultants in Milano. So in Milano we had energy efficiency consultants, structural engineers, town planning, designer of the park, we had the designer of the traffic. We had so many consultants. So what I had to do was, with this other architect, we had to take these ideas from the architects, but then bring to them and say what is feasible. in the regulation of Milano, according to make a feasible project. And also we had to control the costs. And because we had investors, private investors. And in order to win the competition, the private investors need to be sure that they can offer a very good money to buy the land. So it was many issues. This is why I learned so much. I learned not only about the design of the firm, but about the managing of a complex project. Yes, I'm very much interested in Taiwan urban design because it's changing so much, right? And still the car is a priority. So you can see if you go to get the bus, now they painted some lines in green, right? Because it was so dangerous to walk there. So now at least there is a place where you can walk to get the bus, right? But when I take the bus and I go out, I always check if there is a motorbike arriving, because if there is a motorbike, you will crash, right? So, of course, the city should be much more pedestrian-oriented. But also the typology of the new housing or new buildings, they are so different from the traditional one, if I can call them traditional one. So I'm very much interested in knowing how to make something new, still keeping the fragmentation and the possibility of having more chaotic space in the new areas. Because the new areas don't have almost any shops on the ground floor, but they are very quiet shops. So, and they don't have many activities that are good for everyday life. And you can find it in the old areas of Taiwan or Taichung, for instance. So I think there should be a new way to make the city that combines the two things together. If you go out from Foncia, you find a very chaotic space, right? But then if you go close to the Opera House, you find very isolated buildings. And the tendency is not to have something that is a mix of the two.
And something is missing in the middle.
Yeah, it's missing. Because people need something that for everyday life they can find. So they can find shops, they can socialize. So this is missing, I think. From Europe, we can learn. Because European cities generally have a lot of good combination of public space and private space and space for everyday life. Yeah, we just said, right, that there should be new kind of typologies of making parts of the city. Because, of course, Taiwan, in some cities, the land is so expensive, right? So they tend to create residential buildings. But that is not to make a city. So this is the problem, I think, one of the problems. And but I think there are some very good architects in Taiwan. But of course, architects are called to make some very private housing generally from the construction companies, from the investors. But there is very little talk probably with the city to create a vivid part of the city. For instance, the city of Taichung, I think, created very beautiful public spaces, like the linear park that goes from from the art museum to the museum, going to a slit and going up to north. That area is very beautiful. Chinmay is very beautiful. And also is vivid, right? Still is vivid, still has shops. But then lately is going to be more everything separated, too much separated.
So we need to figure out how to combine it.
I think so, yes. So you have seen Venice, you have seen Lucca, you have seen Florence. It's more combined, right? Because traditionally cities were made by the everyday life. And we need to go back to everyday life, not in the car. If you don't have a car, you need to find everything quite close to you, right? For everyday life. But if you have a car, you just go to big supermarket and go back with many bags. But that is not to make a city. So our lifestyle should change a little bit.
So the lifestyle should be go to a walking city.
Yes.
But not a car city.
Yes. Yes.
It will be more natural.
Yes, more natural. You also tend to meet more people. You need to tend to know the people in the shops. It's a little bit old style, but there is a good part of it.
So the people will be closer and the connection will be
yes.
deeper.
And especially in the society where there is growing elderly. In Italy we have this problem, in Japan there is this problem. To have something close to your house and somebody you know can be very useful. Because people tend to be more alone also. So we need to think about the sustainability of social system in the city. It's very difficult, very difficult. I would like to be very close to Carlo Scarpa, architecture, because you saw also Tombe Brion, right? And there are this kind of architecture that are very much sensible to the relationship with nature, to the use of materials, to the use how the light enters in the building, how the light touches the materials. I like this kind of architects very much. Also Peter Zumthor. But during my let's say career, I learned from many architects. There is one story that made change my life, in the choice of my life, that is connected to Kengo Kuma, because I know Kengo Kuma since 2006, I think. It's a kind of relationship because I invited him to Torino first time, then I went to Tokyo, then we had a work together, we co-signed the hotel together, so we worked together a lot. But it happens once that I was working after the Milano City Life. I had a career as a design manager because I was very good in managing complex projects. So I was working as a design manager in a company called Bovis Land Lease. Today it's called Land Lease in Milano. And Kuma arrived and he said to me, I gave him a ride by car. And he said, okay, you gave me a ride from Torino to Milano, and now you come to see what I'm doing in Salone del Mobile. So I went to see what he was doing, and it was about speaking about architecture, the architectural design, and the quality of architecture, quality of details, quality of furniture. So I went back to the office to work the same morning, and I thought, I cannot be a design manager, I need to be an architect. So I left the job. So that was not, for me it was like a coincidence, very important in my life, because in that job I was gaining a lot of money, but I was feeling it was not the right job for me. And so that coincidence made me to change. That in that moment I decided I will change.